everyone, it's Serena from Pay or Wait, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Handmaid's Tale, Season 3, Episode 10, Bear Witness or Witness. Guys, I'm so sorry that I've been gone, but I was not feeling well, and I'm working on a big presentation that I have to do in the morning for my director, so I've just been absolutely busy trying to catch up from being gone off and on for the past 2 weeks, so I'm so sorry that this was late. None of the episodes for the rest of the season will be late. You have my word. I'm going to go ahead and try to pre-record most of them so they will be ready at 1 a.m. as soon as you guys are done watching the episode after it airs. So I apologize. I love you guys. I miss you guys. Let's talk about this episode. So we see that June is finally returning to Commander Lawrence's house from her being in the hospital for the over a month of Matthew until she had the baby and unfortunately passed away. So we see that she's limping. She's still in pain. We saw last week's episode where she kind of had these bruises on her knees from kneeling down and praying. So Lydia's like, be careful, you know, just take one step at a time. And I was just like, you know what? I just don't understand Lydia sometimes, because when she gets into the house, she's just like, you know, make sure you go get your rest. And I was just like, so what I never understand is how they inflict pain upon the handmaids, you know, especially June with everything that she's doing. But then afterwards, they try to act like, oh, we care about your health. We want to make sure you're okay. Ma'am, you weren't doing all of that when you had this girl kneeling going crazy for over a month in the hospital as a punishment. So why do you care now? I just never understand why they do those things. And even when Serena was like, you know, are you doing better? Girl, you don't care, so don't ask her. I don't understand. You guys know you don't give a dang on crap about June, so why do you act like you do? So Lydia, she was really getting on my nerves, because you be the main one trying to inflict pain upon people and then act like, you know, the best, you have the best interest of the handmaid. So that just really bothered me a little bit. So when she walks in, she notices that there's a change, and so Lydia informs her that, you know, since she's been gone, that basically when the water first came back, they raggedy behind the back. And so basically he has made all of the houses try to conform to these DC standards. So we see that he's taken what he's learned in DC. He's trying to further his power, trying to gain more control, more status. And so now he's trying to bring back the practices of Gilead, also too, to probably impress Mr. Winslow. And so we see that they've redecorated every single portion of the house. But most interestingly, we see that Commander Lawrence's his study where he does his work, that's the only place that really hasn't been remodeled. And so I find that very interesting to see, you know, maybe is he holding on to the last piece of himself that he has in his own home, you know, in his study. We see all of the books are kind of scattered around everywhere. It's very disorganized. It's definitely not up to DC standards. So I thought it was interesting to kind of see this one room that still, it's like he's holding on to that last shred of him having control. And so we see that Lydia tells her that, like, you know, it's a shame that you missed last month's ceremony, but God returned you just in time for this month's ceremony. And essentially, June tells her, you know, I feel as though my time of prayer has led me to realize, you know, my real purpose. And so we know that June is talking about basically taking the kids out of Gilead and, you know, delivering them to freedom. But Lydia's like, you're just such a good girl. And I was like, Lydia, after all the times that June has disobeyed you, like, you really think that you having her kneel after all the other crazy stuff that you done to her, that this was the one thing that truly like helped her understand that she just needs to follow the rules? Like, why did you feel as though she was really like changed? I don't understand why you keep falling for this, Lydia. But she tells her to go upstairs, but instead she goes in the kitchen. She sees Beth, and so she sees the scones on the table, and then Beth tells her, you know, when they send scones, that means no. And so essentially they've been trying to get medication for Angela, Mrs. Lawrence, but they have not been able to do so. And so the scones symbolize like, no, we cannot help you get any medication. And so she kind of says like, you know, how has she been? And then Beth shows like she has her ears bleeding. She has a cut, and she basically says she's been throwing things at this point. So June asks her for a favor, and she was like, of course. That's like, June, can you give her like just a couple of hours? You see the girl ear bleeding, she been getting stuff thrown at. You don't want to just let her get adjusted to you being back in the house and you already asking her a favor. And so she asked her basically help with trying to get the network to help her smuggle the kids out of Gilead. She's like, girl, what are you talking about? Like, you are going to get killed. Like, no, ain't nobody about to do that. And so she basically just disregards it. She's just like, whatever, girl, you gonna get yourself killed. You ain't finna get me killed, but you go ahead and get yourself killed. But ain't nobody finna agree to do this. So as she's trying to walk up the stairs, she runs into Commander Lawrence. We hear that Eleanor is yelling at him, telling him to get out. He looks flustered. He looks frustrated. He's walking down the steps. He tells her welcome back. And then when she goes to talk to him, she says that she's worried about her, but he asks her to give his wife space, because we really don't know how she's going to react to things. So it's just best if you stay away from him. And so when she talks to him, she basically just says, you know, you can help her. You can get her out of Gilead. And she says she can't keep going on like this. Like, you need to get her help. And so when basically he asked her, like, what do you know about everything being taken away from you? And I was like, she was like, everything. Sir, don't you know all the stuff that June has been through? Like, you really gonna ask her that question? She's been through a lot. Not to say that I've excused any of the raggedy things that she's done this past season, but if anyone knows about, like, having everything taken away from you, like, getting more than you can possibly bear, it would be June, to, like, be able to know, yeah, I've had everything done to me that's possibly can be done. You name it, it's probably happened to me. I know what I'm talking about. And so when she walks away, in her head, she says, you know, he's scared. And then she says, fear can be a good motivator. And when people are scared, it does make them, you know, do crazy things that, you know, logically, if a rational person, you know, were to think it out, they'd be like, no, that's not a good idea. But when you are afraid, when you have fear, when you feel as though that there is something to lose, you know, you decide to take chances. And we see towards the end of the episode that his fear has led him to make a dangerous choice. So we see that June's go to the store and she walks in with one of the aunts, but we see that there's a huge presence of the Guardians in the store. I'm assuming they beefed up security from when Matthew killed one of the Guardians. So she goes to talk to one of the handmaids. Everyone's kind of like walking away from her. She's talking about they probably think that I'm cursed or I'm a terrorist. And she was like, well, not yet, because she's clearly going to help the children escape out of Gilead. But she goes to talk to one of the handmaids and she basically tells her idea. And then she was like, you'll end up on the wall just for thinking that. Like, I'm not doing this. They're watching every little thing that we do and you're conspicuous in the first place. I was like, yeah, June, like, why do you keep putting people's lives in danger? Why the first time you go back to the store that this is what you want to do? I do not understand the things that you do, but I think it's very clear to point out that June is not 100% herself yet. She's better than what we saw her in last week's episode, Heroic, but she's still not there. And then even when she asked her, like, are you okay? She's like, no, I'm not effing okay. Like, just because she's out of the hospital and she's out of that environment and she's starting to get closer to herself, that does not mean that she's 100% there. So you can still see that you kind of question, is June in her right mind, especially with the decisions that she's made, what she's setting herself out to do to help the children escape. You wonder, like, is this the real June speaking, or is this kind of the June who kind of lost her mind a bit while she was in the hospital watching over of Matthew? And so we see that they call an alarm for an inspection. And so all of the women are taken to this place and she tells everyone to stand with their head down and their hands in front. And notice that June was the only one who stood without her hands in front. I was like, June, why do you always have to be the person that stands out? I don't know if that was an intentional choice so we can easily locate where June was, because all of the handmaids are dressed the same. They look the same, you know, with everyone's head down and their hands in front. So I don't know if she was directed to do that, or that just speaks to June, who just never wants to necessarily follow the rules. And so Lydia tells everyone to be on their best behavior. They want to make sure that they're on point for their guests. And we see, who we see come up? We see Raggedy Fred. Oh, I can't stand him. Every time I see him, it just makes my skin crawl. I just get like this taste of disgust every time I see him come on screen. So his raggedy behind come up, and where he go? He goes straight to June. I was like, why can't you just leave this woman alone? Like, just leave her alone. I don't understand why he just has this fascination with June. And so he basically goes up to her and asks, is she okay? And so he tells her, like, you know, are you cold? I'm sorry for bringing you out in the cold. And she's like, I'm fine. He's like, yeah, you're a Boston girl. He's like, you know, maybe I could put in a transfer for you to DC. And then she looking like, sir, your wife is there. Do you see Serena? Leave me alone. That's not what she was like said, but you could tell that that's what she was thinking. But I'm just like, Fred, you could tell that he was like that lame person in school. He didn't have no girls, no nothing. He probably grew up with money. And so basically he tried to like buy girls off, like, you know, I can buy you this, or I could take you to this place, or I could do this and that. You can tell that he's such an insecure man that he needs this power. He needs this status to make himself feel important, but also to make him feel desired by other people. Like, if I can offer you this, then maybe June like will want me. And so he just really bothers me. So I like when she was like, sir, go to your wife, leave me alone, bye-bye. So we see Serena walking up with Mr. Winslow. And so we see that he's walking around and he's looking at the different handmaids. He talks about how the handmaids here have quite the reputation. And I was like, they sure do. Not a good reputation either. So he was being real shady with what he said. Even Serena looked at him like, you didn't have to do all of that. And I was like, yes, he did. Because, you know, your handmaids up here, y'all be wilding out. So he's walking around and he looks at them and he sees Janine and he sees the eye patch. And we know that Aunt Lydia gave her the eye patch because she was feeling insecure about her eye that got infected and hurt when Matthew beat her. And so he says, like, this is out of dress code. And she was like, I understand, but she was violently beaten. We made an exception. And he was just like, do you feel as though that we should be making exceptions? Like, when all these women that have basically been a part of rebellions, that's probably not the best idea. And so Aunt Lydia basically stands her ground and, you know, says that this is something that we've all agreed on and, you know, it's okay. So we see that while Serena goes to talk to June and she asks her, like, you know, how are you feeling? Once again, I'm just like, Serena, you don't care how June feels. Just let it go. I don't know why you still talk to her. You don't like her. She don't like you. So then June was petty. She's like, I'm doing good. Like, how's your arm? And I was like, ooh, you shady for that because, you know, she cut her. And so Serena just kind of looked at her like, I can't stand you. Yeah, so why did you go ask her how she was doing in the first place? But one of the things that I do want to point out is a side conversation that's happening in the background. They do a very great job of trying to distract you, but also kind of prophesize it or foreshadowing what is yet to come. And basically Mr. Winslow is talking to Fred and Lydia, and Fred is saying that they're slowly making the changes for the ring and for the veil. So we saw in the episode Household when they went to DC that they said that the handmaids took a voluntary vow of silence. We know when nothing voluntary about that. So their mouths were sewn shut and then they had the veil to cover it. So they're basically saying, Fred is basically saying that he's slowly going to actually roll that out amongst the handmaids that are there. But Lydia, make sure to say that, hey, this vow is voluntary, correct? And I was like, Lydia, you know, who's going to say, hey guys, come sew my mouth shut to make sure so I can't talk? No one's going to agree to that. So I just feel like sometimes Lydia is very delusional in thinking that she has a choice into what to do with the handmaids, that she has full control over them. I just thought it was very I don't understand why she kept saying like this is voluntary. It is not voluntary. You know, when you saw those women that none of them signed up to do this, but I am scared for the women to know that they're going to be incorporating all of the practices of DC that is going to be rolled out there as well. So it'd be interesting to see if they do that this season or if they wait for next season to introduce that as well. So we see that Mr. Winslow goes up to June after Fred introduces them and says, you remember her from DC? And so we kind of let in that Mr. Winslow actually knew Joseph before this whole world of Gilead was created. They used to actually golf with one another every Sunday. And so he asked him, like, how is Commander Lawrence? Like, how is he treating you? How's everything going? And she said, he treats me with respect. And so Mr. Winslow kind of looks, but we see Fred raggedy behind. He's sitting up there. He is really feeling a certain type of way. And I'm like, Fred, are you serious right now? Like you're really getting upset because she said that he treats her with respect. And we know that she said that to give a jab to Fred, to let him know like she's happy with where she's at. She doesn't care that she's not with them anymore. But clearly this does something to Fred because he's always so insecure. He's trying to win June's approval some way, shape, or form. And so he kind of gives a look. Serena gives a look because I don't know if she sees like that Fred was affected by what June had to say. But Mr. Winslow, he basically just keeps walking on. So we see that they're having a discussion. So we see that Fred, Mr. Winslow, and Serena, they're kind of having this discussion. And basically Fred comes up with this idea where he wants to turn Mr. Winslow against Joseph. So he basically hints that he doesn't feel that Joseph is committed to the true call of Gilead, that he's not performing his ceremony. Serena's kind of looking like, why are you doing this? Like, this makes no sense. And so she tries to diffuse the situation, but when Mr. Winslow is like, no, like, this is not okay. If he's not following the ceremonies, that he cannot lead his household. And so basically it foreshadows what happens towards the end of the episode, where they bear witness to make sure that this ceremony is taking place. But in the meantime, June goes back to the house. They ask where Commander Lawrence is. She says that he's at work. So now we see that he's been going to meetings. And I don't think that he's been forced to go to meetings. I think that he's going to the meetings now because he can't afford for any of the commanders to come into his house to see that his wife is bipolar, that she has mental issues, and risk her being sent away. And so because of that, he has to make the sacrifice to go outside of his comfort zone and go to meetings to kind of put a shield over what is happening in his household. And I think that this continues to show that he loves and cares for his wife, and he's going to do whatever he can to protect her from the rules of Gilead. But I think this is also foreshadowing what June says to him later in the episode, is like, why did you think that Gilead would never come for you? And so he's starting to see that these rules now affect him, and now he understands, he kind of understands. I don't think he'll ever be able to truly understand the pain that he's inflicted upon others in this kind of caste system, but he's starting to see that, you know, this wasn't a good idea. I'm a part of a bad thing. So we see that June is snooping in the office because Joseph isn't at home. And then we see that as she's trying to break into the file cabinets, Angela comes in. She's like, girl, what are you doing? She was like, she pauses for a moment. She had the scissors behind her back. I was like, girl, you better not stab Angela. But she tells her, like, she just looks down. She's like, thinking like, let me just tell this girl the truth and see what happened. So she tells her that she's looking for the case files to figure out, you know, where the children are of the Handmaids. And she was just like, oh, it's downstairs. Like, let me show you. So she takes her to find the file. She shows her where it's at. And so June asks her, like, have you ever thought about leaving? Like, have you ever thought about getting out? And she's like, why? So I can get mood stabilizers instead of herbal tea. So you can see, even though she's, what people will say, she's mentally ill, she's still very well aware, you know, of what is happening, you know, that she doesn't have her medication. She's still a very intelligent woman. And so then she also says, you know, he would be a war criminal. And, you know, I don't think that any of us have, or me, myself, I can only speak for myself, I've never really thought about the fact that, you know, why wouldn't they just leave and get out? But if they did, you, like, committed treason. You overthrew the government. You started this whole, like role of, like, this place of Gilead. And so I never thought about it. If they did have a second change of heart, if they wanted to leave, they can't, because they're going to be tried for treason. They're going to be in jail or put to death. And so for the first time, I actually thought about that. And even Angela saying that, you know, it makes sense, like, why they have to commit to what they've done at this point. And so we see that as she's, like, looking through these notes, we find out that Janine's kid, one of her kids, were killed. And she talks about how, like, you know, kids still aren't safe from vehicle accidents. And, you know, we still see that even though they try to kind of shield the children from these things, or shield Gilead from the troubles or the sins of the previous world, that there's still some things that they can't fully control. And so we are also given a timeline that it's been 5 years since Gilead was started, as June is kind of talking about the different kids. So we now know that it's been 5 years that they've been living in this society. So it's pretty nice to kind of get a timeline as to how much time has passed, because I don't know about you, I've been wondering that for quite some time. So as she's downstairs, Beth tells her like, hey, like you're needed in the sitting room. And so June is just kind of looking like, something's up. So she goes upstairs, and then as soon as she walks into the room, she knows exactly what is happening. They're going to make her do a ceremony. And so it's interesting that you know, June, who's the only person who's been a part of a ceremony, since no one has done that in the Lawrence's household, she tells the Marthas where they need to stand. Beth and Sienna, she tells them where they need to go stand. She knows exactly what is going to happen. And so basically, Serena, Fred, and Mr. Winslow, raggedy behind, they come up in there with Aunt Lydia. And so then what happens? I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to read these notes because I watched this a long time ago. So basically, they come in, and then Eleanor starts talking about, no, Serena tells Eleanor, I hope nothing impedes God's will tonight. I was just like, I can't stand you, Serena, whatever. They're bearing witness to ensure like this ceremony happens. So that's the title, witness. They're bearing witness. So I was like, oh my goodness, it was so tense. But until when Commander Lawrence asked Aunt Lydia, like, do you want to sit in the bed with us as well to make sure that this happens? I was like, you're so petty, Joseph, but I was here for that. And they even made June laugh. So they go upstairs, and essentially they, Joseph is just like, okay, we're just going to sit here. We're going to act like we did it, and we can go on about our day. And so June is like, no, you cannot do that. There is a doctor here. They are going to make sure that you've actually performed the ceremony. A doctor is going to check me. We have to do this. And so Angela loses it, as anyone would, especially given the circumstances where, you know, Joseph has promised her that they would never have to do this. Like, you know, they will be a part of this world, but they will never actually partake in this ceremony. That was the deal that Joseph and Eleanor made. And so she loses it. He's trying to calm her down. It's actually kind of heartbreaking, as you can hear how scared he is in his voice. You can hear his heartbreak as he's watching his wife's heart break because of what they have to do. And so essentially, June is basically coaching them, you know, what needs to be done. You know, she coaches him, you know, just close your eyes. Better if you close your eyes. Just treat it like a job. You know, all the things that she tells herself as she's being raped every month for the past 5 years. And so it's interesting that in the beginning of the episode, when he was like, how do you know how much somebody can take? You're starting to see now like what she's been through, and now she's having to coach you through something that you didn't think that you will be able to withstand, nor would your wife be able to withstand that as well. So he turns the light off. They complete the ceremony. Serena and Lydia come in. Serena asks where Angela is. She goes to kind of sit with Angela because she knows this is hard for her. She knows that they haven't been doing it. Like, everybody in their house knows they haven't been doing the ceremony except for Mr. Winslow. But, you know, she goes to talk to her, and then basically the doctor comes to check June, asks her all these questions, and June is just like, yep, no cramping, none of that. So they confirm everything. Commander Lawrence, he comes downstairs. He just goes straight to the kitchen. He walks past him, and Fred had this little raggedy smirk on his face. He, like, you did all of this just to embarrass June because she made you feel a certain type of way, because she didn't want to go to DC with you, because she didn't, she was happy where she was with Commander Lawrence, and she said he treated her with respect. Like, all of this that you went through just to like assert your authority, to show that you have the power, that you wear the pants. I just can't stand him. And then going back to why people keep asking June, is she okay? Knowing that they don't care about her, and they inflict half of the pain that she endures. So afterwards they come downstairs, and then Fred basically asks her, is she okay? Sir, really? Am I okay? Really? I was just like, I can't stand him. And then she was like, you know what? At least it wasn't you. I was like, oh. So I was just like, Fred was looking like, damn. And I was like, yes, June, give him all that shade. And even Serena was looking like, you raggedy, you just raggedy. Oh, I can't stand you. And she just walks off. And he looking all stupid, as he should have been, because you did all of this for nothing, okay? So essentially, when June goes to check on Commander Lawrence, and so he's talking to her. He hands her some birth control, and she's like, you know, you'd be torn apart by dogs for doing it. And I'm like, dang, just for giving somebody birth control. Like, these laws are just so serious in Gilead. And so she was like, you know, this is not going to be the first or the last time that this happens. Kind of like, you can give me this birth control, but until I am pregnant, Like, they're not going to stop coming to make sure that you are doing these ceremonies at this point. There's a target on your back. And so basically he says he knows. He tells her that he's going to help her. He's going to get a truck. He wants her to get his wife out, and he's going to help her get the children. And then she basically says, like, you know, you can come too. She was like, just bring something valuable, which are the kids, the stolen children of Gilead. And she says that he would actually be a hero instead of a war criminal. So it seems that he's kind of thinking about it. And this goes back to when she says fear is a good motivator. He's scared. This is motivate him. So now, because they had to do this ceremony, he's afraid for his wife. He's afraid that there's a target on his back. And now that has led him to make this dangerous decision to help June. So when she's at the store, she approaches Alma again. And so this time she starts talking about her son. And so after that, Janine kind of asks what happened to her son. And because Janine has been through so much, she get her behind beat like every episode. She just been through so much these past 3 seasons. I just want her to be happy. And I was glad that June lied to her about, you know, her child being killed. She says that the child is happy, has good parents, everything is going fine. And this puts a smile on Janine's face. And she tells them like she wants to help them with this plan. And they kind of look at her and she's like, I'm brave. And I'm like, she is brave. She's been to hell and back over and over again every single season, and she has a light about her. She's still fighting. She took up for Matthew. Like, she still sees the good in Lydia. She's a good person and she wants to be useful. So basically, they agree to help her. And then when she comes home, she sees all these muffins on the table, and basically she's like, you know, what happened? And they were like, hey, the muffins mean yes. So the network agreed to help her get the children of Gilead out. And so now she knows, like, she has the support of the network. She has the support of the Handmaids. And she's like, hey, we're going to need a bigger boat for this because we got to get all these kids out. But before the episode ends, we see that Serena goes to have a conversation with Fred. And basically she tells him, like, you know, you've been prioritizing yourself instead of getting Nicole. So now you need to help me do what I need to do. We need to get back to what the main purpose of this whole setup was, to get Nicole back. And so basically she hands him the phone that Mr. Torello gave her while she was visiting in Canada. And she tells him that she met someone who can help them. And she basically says, all you have to do is offer their cooperation. And then the episode ends. And so we see in next week's episode, we see that it seems as though the Waterfords are going to trick him into getting, I don't know if they're going to go to Canada to steal Nicole. I don't know what's going to happen necessarily, but they're up to no good. And then we see that Angela pulls a gun on Fred. I see that she's probably still very traumatized by what happened with the ceremony. He's lied to her. He broke the one promise that he gave her. So I don't know what the heck is going to happen. But I did really enjoy this episode of Witness. I thought that they did a very great job of kind of transitioning June into normal life, but also to showing that she's still not 100% June. She still is having some of these psychological effects of what happened to her in episode 9, Heroic. But we see that everyone has to support, and we even saw that the Marthas, even though they sent the muffins to say yes, that they still have doubts about actually being able to successfully carry out this mission. But it seems that things are going to start picking up now that they're going to try to smuggle everyone out. Now that it seems that the Waterfords are going to try to smuggle Nicole out of Canada, things are going to get pretty interesting. And I think that if this is episode 10, I believe that there are only 3 episodes left. So I'm assuming that things are going to speed up very quickly. Hopefully there's no more dragging. I know a lot of people have had issues with the pacing of this season. Half of y'all said that y'all won't go watch no more, but it's 3 more episodes, y'all. Let's just give them a chance. Let's see what's going to happen. I feel like they can crank it out. I haven't watched the 3 episodes. I might try to catch up on them this weekend just so I can get the content out. But guys, those are my thoughts on The Handmaid's Tale Season 3, Episode 10, Bear Witness or Witness. As always, my name is Serena from Pay or Waits, and if you like what you saw today, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and make sure you hit that notification bell. And I love you guys 3000. I'll see you soon.